Hey folks, it's a beautiful evening and we're going to be talking about something super fun and super interesting. We're going to be talking about creativity, super creations, and the future of creativity in a world in which AI is going to dominate most of the art and most of creative outputs. In the current moment, we are severely limited because of what I call the skill gap. You might have the taste, you might have the imagination, but unless you got the skill, the technical skill, you're not going to be able to bring that vision, bring that the fruits of those imagination to the world, right? So, take music for example. You can admire a great piece of music, be it Beethoven's sonata or be it um, some modern music like I don't know Lana Del Rey's "Summertime Sadness." I know. Um, you can appreciate that. You can feel it on your bones. But you don't need to know music theory for that. But if you want to create something, you do need to know music theory, right? And that takes time, and not everyone has time. Sure, we might be interested in appreciating the outputs, the creative, the creative outputs and the fruits, but we might not have the time, the money, the space, or the skills to be able to do this on our own, right? Movies or TV series are another example. You might have a great TV series in you, a seed of an idea, or even more of an expanded version. But because of financial constraints and because of skill issues, you just won't be able to bring it to the world. I dream of a world in which imagination is the ultimate limit, not skill. Sure, some purists might disagree, but when were they ever right about the future? We're about to enter a world in which the power of the creative spirit of the entire species is going to be in the hands of every single person who can harness it. So it'll lead to an explosion of art and content, which will have a similar quality curve shape as the quality of our creations in this moment, right? So when you think of our creative output as species, you got absolute rubbish on the left. You got most of the things which would be somewhere in the middle, as in the average quality. It looks like a IQ bell curve, right? I think roughly it should look like that. There's lots of absolute abject creations. Movies actually they require that a certain threshold you have to pass, so they wouldn't be in the absolute rubbish. But things like I don't know pieces of music, right, where you can create music using some simple tools, or you can write a piece of prose, you can write a piece of poem using just words, and it probably is going to be abysmal for a lot of people, right? Because they have not been trained how to do that well. So there's a lot of absolute trash bin quality, and then there's obviously majority of the quality would be somewhere in the middle, and then you've got things at the very end which are of the top most quality, the premium quality, the elite quality. That does not make these the most popular media, because what appeals to people depends on what makes the airwaves and what actually comes out, becomes popular in pop culture, is something which has appealed to a lot of people. And some people can tie popularity as a metric to how great a piece of something is, how great a piece of music is, or how great a movie is. I don't want to do it, and that's just silly, right? Because you're not going to say that Avengers is the greatest movie of all time, right? We can literally see that. And yet, it is one of the movies which has been watched by, I think, the most number of people on the planet. And you can do this for every single thing, right? You're not going to say that, who are some popular singers, Rihanna or Taylor Swift. I'm going to get the Swifties panties in a bunch. But these people, right, they don't have critics are not going to say that these are the greatest musicians of all time, or even of this time, right? We can differentiate between the popularity of a piece of music and its quality, and we have different ways of looking at and evaluating quality that I don't want to get into. It's obviously dependent upon the category of creation, but we agree to this, right? But what happens is that with the financial models, the way these are set up, with movies, you need to appeal to a bare number of people. It could be bare minimum number of people. That could be in the millions for the blockbuster kinds of movies, or it could be in the tens of thousands for indie movies, right? So a horror movie that you release just in a select few theaters in the US, something along those lines. So we are limited substantially by that. A lot of people who want to do things at scale, or even do things which require funding, right? Because to create a movie, you need cameras, you need actors, you need to have editors, etc., right? So these things cost. What's going to happen when we inject AI powered creativity into the mix is that we're going to shift the bell curve, is going to be a bell curve as we just established, to the right, right? So you're going to see a lot less trash bin quality output because almost everyone's going to use AI in some way or shape. And because there's a minimum quality that AI is going to have compared to humans, can create some absolute rubbish. We are going to see those things vanish, but we are going to see a lot more average quality because again, if you just look at the average quality of writing of ChatGPT, it leaves a lot to be desired, right? It's a lot on the table. And what it's also going to do on the extreme end, the extreme right end, so it's going to, as I said, it's going to shift the bell to that right end. It's going to lead to a lot more creations on that end. And the size of the bell curve is obviously going to increase, right? Because someone who's producing a piece a day, a piece a month, or a piece a year, a movie a year, they can now do 10 movies a year, right? So you're going to see the expansion of the sheer quantity. We're also going to see an increase in quality, and we're going to see an increase in quality as for what matters to us on the very end, right? The right end. So we're going to see a lot more great creations because people who got great skill to make a great piece of content, a great piece of art, be it music, they can use their skills and then amplify those skills with these AI tools that will allow them to accelerate their process and be able to multiply their output by 10x, 20x. So pretty soon we are going to be able to say goodbye to subpar content, which is a boon, right? I love watching movies. I say that, but I haven't watched a movie in a while. The reason for that is that most movies are absolutely rubbish, right? Even the movies, but I tend to be quite picky in the movies I choose. So it's not like I'm just picking a movie randomly off IMDb. I'm picking movies that from a base which contains movies that I think I might like, and even those movies turn out to be absolute trash pits. So, and same with music, right? Listen to music, but it's not like it gets me all excited or gets me feeling all sorts of ways. But thankfully, and very soon, we're going to say goodbye to a world in which we had to put up with average quality or low quality content and media and art. In this world where the amount of AI creations or AI powered creations are going to increase, we're also going to see the value of art or output created by human increase. So examples of this are galore, right? You've got Swiss watches which are handmade or things that are handcrafted like wallets or belts or purses. These are much higher in value compared to the labor that goes into it because some people put a premium on human labor. And we can see that in a world in which most of the content, most of the output, most of the art is going to be created by AIs, we can just see there being a premium on human created art. You'll also see the kinds of creativity that'll range from scarcely believable to what would have seemed absolutely impossible. Imagine seeing a movie co-directed by Nolan and Kubrick, watching a movie that is created specifically for you, or a playlist that hits all the right spots, that gets you in the right mood, or finding the best pieces of content out there in the jungle using deeply personalized AI search, being able to play and create games that adapt to you in real time, being able to co-create content with others in ways that would have been absolutely impossible just a few years prior. I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling, of narratives, of stage setting, of inspiring, of provoking emotions and provoking thoughts and provoking change through art. The pen is mightier than the sword, and it's only going to get mightier even more as the influencing and its capabilities of influencing its societal engineering and conditioning and pushing the Overton and other windows get more expanded. And this obviously brings massive risks because information art, content art creates us and shapes us in all sorts of subliminal ways. But I think the risk is minimized because of the fact that creation, the consumption itself is going to be more fragmented rather than more centralized, right? If you're looking at the same art pieces, if we watch the same movies, if we were listening to the same music, and if these pieces were intended to take us in certain directions, let's say propaganda, music or movies in the Soviet times, right? Then that would have been a cause of concern. But because there'll be personalized content, because there'll be content that you can create in a jiffy, just with a voice command or brain base, as we're going to discuss in a minute, we are going to see a great fragmentation in the kind of media that we consume. And that's going to have some interesting implications. One implication is that our shared worlds, a lot of, we got our personal worlds, right? You got your beliefs, your personality, your ideas about how the world works, etc. And then we also got a shared world in which you subscribe to notions of law, notions of systems, institutions, etc. in the whichever land you live in, right? So if you're an American, you're going to follow the American ideals, the American ways, right? So there's that shared reality you have with the rest of the American public, to more or less a degree. What's going to happen with this fragmentation is that you're going to not break down, we are going to increase the height of these silos that we already have, right? Because social media created this echo chamber phenomena, and it's only going to increase in its magnitude and its potential to impact us and shape us and influence us in ways, influence our lives and our decision making, relationships, etc. So we are going to live in ever greater, ever taller silos, as in when I say taller, we are going to be at the very bottom, but we're going to have less and less of a shared world with the rest of the people, right? And culture, pop culture tends to be one of the things which connects a lot of people. But if you're not going to be talking about what happened in Oppenheimer with your friend because you watched something which was maybe similar themed but suited you more, you're not going to have much to talk about, right? And you might talk about that thing with your AI companion because that companion, the AI has watched that movie with you. So you can still have a discussion, have it, I would say a better discussion than you could have with your friends. Objectively better and subjectively better. Objectively because that discussion could be richer in detail, could go in directions that you just wouldn't be able to go with a fellow human because of cognitive constraints and emotional constraints. And subjectively richer because I think that was the objective. And subjectively richer because the AI would be able to ask you the questions and prompt you and guide that conversation in ways which really gets your brain lit up in all sorts of ways, right? Because the pleasure of conversation comes from the conversation having certain words which elicit certain emotions. And if those words can be more tailored to your neuropsychology, you're going to have a greater impact from that conversation. So we're going to see a lot more of that. That said, there will be pieces of content that will take over the world, even in this world of personalized entertainment, for shared experiences, for the crafts, right? If there's someone who's really world-class at creating a movie, people are going to want to watch that, right? Just for the experience of it. Well, there'll be some fraction of people. It'll be a smaller fraction than we've got currently, but there'll still be people. And there'll obviously be people, movie makers, who will be using mass psychology to want to create mass pieces. So we're always going to have that, though the impact of that is probably going to diminish over time. Even these creations might have user-specific elements, despite being largely viewer agnostic, right? So you and me, we might both watch Oppenheimer, but there might be parts of it, there might be music pieces of it, or there might be even differences in the scenes so theaters are going to be a relic of the past. I mean, that's just bound to happen. That's where the world's been going for some time, but that's just going to go completely kaput in the age of AI. But there might even be small differences in creations that might have been viewed or experienced by millions, right? So we're going to have that as something which, again, we're going to see in newer forms of art, right? Interactive art, partially interactive art, largely the same, but parts of it being user agnostic, right? So me and you, we could watch the same movie, let's say Oppenheimer, but there might be differences in the music score. There might be differences in the dialogue, some parts of the movie, right? So again, we're going to, yeah, the possibilities of this are fascinating. We're going to see a revolution in both the ends, on the creation side, so the creator, and the consumer side. With the creation, everyone will become a creator. Everyone who will want to become a creator. And I imagine, give me a second. Yeah, so we're talking about creativity and how everyone will become a creative person if they want, or everyone will be able to create. Let me put it that way, right? You won't be a creative because to become a creative, you need to have a certain skill set. But if the definition of creator simply means someone who creates something, then everyone will become a creator, functionally speaking. The skill gap will become minimal. The gap between what you want to create and being able to create that will become so minimal, or almost non-existent, that it will just make it possible for everyone to want to create the heart's desire. To be a developer in the 1950s, you had to know machine code, you had to understand the nitty-gritty of how the machine worked. Over time, you had to have an IQ of almost 140. Now, your average Joe and Jane can code and can create applications, complex looking applications, and complex applications with complex functionality. What's happened is that we increase a layer of abstraction, right? So we start out with machine code, then we built a level of code above that made it easier to write machine code, and then we built a code on top of that, which made it easier still to write that bit of code. And then we got Python, which you can almost read as English now. So you can write if you write a pseudocode, which is just code without following syntax, that pseudocode would very much a literate person should be able to understand that pseudocode. So that's the state of the art in coding. And then we got better, easier ways to code too, even beyond that. Like you can code using blocks, the point is that we've seen this trend in the world of development. Now we're going to see this in the world of creativity. But in this world, the impact will be greater still, because it's going to impact almost everyone, right? Because we all want to consume, right? We all want to engage in something interesting, something which moves us or makes us feel, right? That is the most fundamental thing that everyone, without exception, unless they've just lost complete function of their brain, unless they are Donald Trump or Joe Biden, offend everyone equally. That's the rule. Unless they've lost all cognitive capacity, they are going to want to feel a certain way. So, and then if you reduce the skill level to just being able to prompt, then you're going to make everyone into a creator. Creating could become as simple as just prompting and then real-time editing with voice commands and intuitive and quick access interfaces. So you could just be like, if you're creating a movie, you could say that, okay, plot this scene, give me some inspiration, give me some ideas I could use for the first scene. Or you could just say that, okay, create a scene, create a movie for me that has these elements. I want to watch a horror movie which is about a child who's been possessed by I don't know, I mean, that's the most cliche thing, but yeah, shows my lack of creativity. Darn. That's another interesting thing to talk about that we're going to talk about in a minute. But what this is also going to do is when you make things a lot easier, there are obviously pros and cons of everything, right? There are trade-offs with everything in life. The advantage is pretty obvious. The disadvantage is you're not going to push yourself as much, right? If you want to have some ideas, if you want to do some ideation, some brainstorming, if you want to get some inspiration, you're not going to watch movies with the intent of picking ideas. You're not going to be selective in the movies you watch with the intent of selecting, or you're not going to read books with the intent of digesting it and digesting what makes this book stand out and sparkle, right? Say Julius Caesar. You wouldn't go read that book to write a book like that. You would just ask your AI companion to write something of that sort, to use that as an inspiration to write something in whatever domain you want to write in. So there will be two categories of people. One, for whom that ease will make it so that the creative powers will wane, because again, creativity is a muscle, right? You can get better at creativity. Sure, there are biological limitations, there are genetic limitations, but we don't really understand the biological manifestation of creativity, so we don't want to get into that. But sure, there must be, right? There must be on the level of the brain, because everything happens in the physical realm. So on the level of that brain, yeah. So we were talking about how the brain creativity is a muscle, and there'll be those who find it so easy to create that they won't be exercising that muscle, while there'll be those who want to keep on exercising that power, that muscle, and they'll be using these tools in ways to augment their workflow, but not to completely replace the need to work hard, right? To think hard, to put themselves in those creative modes and states. In the world of Neuralink, we won't be even needing detailed prompts. You can just put a Neuralink device in your brain, and then that can be used to create movies that are movies or games or whatever piece of media you want to consume, that can create something that is tailored and personalized to you on on the deepest level, the neuropsychological level, right? On the level of your brain. And yeah, because it'll be able to pick up all the information right there, and it'll be able to feed that into, I mean, that could be an AI that could then feed you that movie so they could watch it without having any device, without having a screen in front of you. But you won't even need that. I mean, sure, some people might want that to have the level of immersiveness in that is absolutely mind-boggling, right? Imagine having that neural link be tapped into your your optic nerves, so that that neural link creates that movie for you, and then you watch it at that level. So you could be sleeping, right? You could literally be sleeping and watching the movie at the same time, as in I say sleeping with your eyes closed, or you could just be, yeah, you could be listening to music without needing anything else. So it's just going to be, the landscape is going to be mind-boggling. It could even show the, yeah, how many will choose to create, how many will choose to consume. This is a question that only time will reveal. There will obviously be those who are content with consuming. The question to consider is, would it be bad for the entire world to become just, yeah, again, I personally don't want to take any stance on what's good or bad um, in this discussion, as in, is pure consumption bad? Because I do think that a lot of people will become pure consumers. Well, they are pure consumers at the moment, but even in this state, they will become pure consumers, where the creations are either creations that they find online using very tailored AI-powered searches, or creations that Neuralink-like devices create for them. Another category we're going to see crop up is, we already have this as a category: people who create for themselves, creator consumers. You can call them, or you can call them people who create for an audience of one, audience of self. And then there are obviously people who might want to create just for their families, their friends, and your circle, right? With functionally zero cost of creation, you're going to see these categories of creation explode too. And there'll obviously be the consumers, and they will be able to consume more actively, more proactively, more interactively, and more immersively. One is by using AI-powered searches that know you deeply, that understand what makes you tick, and in a world in which, so when you watch a movie, there are, right now, if you were to find a movie, you'd have to know certain details, right? You'd have to know maybe roughly the year in which it came out, obviously the name, but you can do it with certain kinds of things, because there have been lots of reviews written about that book. So because we use keyword-based search, Google search might be able to find you something, but you won't be able to find a movie by the kind of emotion it elicited in you, right, or evoked in you, the kind of response. You won't be able to find it based on the thoughts that were not explicitly laid out in the movie. The ideas, the messages, the notions that were not explicit in the movie were more implicit, more. You won't be able to find movies like that, right? But pretty soon we'll be able to categorize data into all sorts of ways, into all sorts of features, into even emotions as vectors or labels, right? So even we'll be able to break this down scene by scene. For example, let's say the ending scene in Titanic, it made all of us weep like little girls. And but if you were to type that find me a movie in which the ending scene was tragic, the protagonists, well, one of the protagonists had to sacrifice themselves. What do you? Yeah, they had to sacrifice themselves. I was just wondering, really, if Jack is the protagonist, what does that make Rose? I guess both of them are protagonists. Well, in some people's books, Rose is no longer a protagonist because she allowed Jack to. Well, she didn't allow Jack to be on the door, which is large enough for both. I don't want to get into that immortal debate. But the point I was trying to make, with this very silly attempt at a joke, was that we will be able to search media using ways that have been impossible until now. Very powerful AI-powered searches that know you deeply. So, for example, you can find something that, or you can give this as a command to the AI-powered search, right? That you can say that. Yeah, you can say that. Find me something. I'm in this mood. Find me something that I'm in this mood. You won't even be able to. You won't need to say that because you will be able to obviously have an insight into your mood better than you would, because most of us are not very self-aware. We are not really in tune with our bodies, right? You might feel a certain way, but you won't know that because there's so many filters. And again, this requires a level of awareness that most people don't have, me including. So with Neuralink, it'll be able to understand your mood, your state, your desired state, how you want to feel. It'll be able to understand, yeah, and then using that information, those things as keywords or bits of information, you'll be able to find something that suits you. You won't need to say that, find me a poem or find me a book, or find me a movie. I mean, books probably are going to be a relic of the past, unfortunately. I think in that world, yeah. Because in the world, there's obviously be some people who will always stick to the old ways, but in a world in which you can create these insanely immersive, insanely detailed, the level of detail I'm referring to over here is 8K or 16K or 24K, right? You're going to be seeing lifelike emotion. You're going to be seeing self-like emotion, as in catered and tailored, personalized to you. In that world, do you really think that people are going to stick to books that have some level of resonance, some level of convergence, but not the entire way through? And again, that's something I've experienced a lot. I'm watching a movie, I'm loving parts of it, and then other parts of it I'm like, that's just rubbish. Right, I can give you 3 examples top of my head. There were things in Interstellar, which is one of the absolute favorite. There were parts of Elysium, which I loved, but a lot of Elysium was just like, oh my gosh, what the hell are you doing, director? Come on, you can do better than that. Apparently not. But yeah, so you always have these things which we always consume things. All of us consume things which are not absolutely hitting the top of the mark, but that gets boring to a degree that, when I say boring, I don't mean W-R-Y, I mean W-H-R-I-R-I-N-G. Yeah, get our motors humming to the degree that we want to enjoy it, even though it doesn't get our engines to the highest gear as possible. But in a world in which you have creations that can do that, why would you want to settle for something which doesn't do it, take your engines all the way to the top, right? Probably not. Most likely not. Yeah. So that'll be emotion-based search, and yeah, other search modalities that will make finding content in a world in which content will have multiplied by 1,000,000x, literally more than that, easily. In 10 years, we're probably going to have 1,000,000 times more data than we have currently, looking at the exponential growth. And because this would have been expected a couple of years back, but because of the leaps we made in AI text to image, AI text to video, AI text to music, etc., we are going to see this. We are definitely going to see an explosion. So in that world, finding the right content would become ever more difficult if not for this, right? So you can call it motion-based search, emotion-based search, you can call it brain-based search. And to find everything, right? So it could be content, it could be products, it could be people, right? Let's say, and yeah, all sorts of things. By the way, I do happen to know a company that's doing some great work in this domain. This emotions-based search, or search that is not constrained to keywords, because that is just one limited dimension, right? There's just so much complexity to human beings. And that company is doing some really impressive work, and they're focused more on finding people. So yeah, we have to wait and see, but there's a lot of promise in the approach that they're taking and the problem they're solving that not many people are talking about. And secondly, for consumers, again, the way this will happen is they'll make the content itself more interactive, more immersive, more of everything that one might want in that piece of content. Again, going back to the brain-based, or just you could be watching a movie and you would be like, okay, let's say you're watching a TV series. I haven't watched a TV series, but let's say you are 5 episodes. Oh, actually, I have Silicon Valley. Let's say you are season 5, you are in season 3 now, and you're 4 episodes in, and you're like, what the hell, this is going in a direction that I'm not enjoying it anymore as much as I was in the first part. So you could now continue on, you could almost fork it in computer science speak, and you could continue on a trajectory that is more tailored to you. So you could almost call it a creation. So the thing is, the line between creation and consumption is going to blur. Yeah, and another thing is that instead of needing to create content for a minimum audience, we alluded to this a few moments ago, where we talked about how you need to, for certain kinds of content, you need to have a minimum audience. We're going to remove that as a requirement, which is going to mean that people are going to create a lot more content for a small audience, be for themselves or be for 10, 20 people, and a lot of those people are going to publish this online. And there might even be consumers that might not be connected to this person who might want to consume that piece of content, right? But they wouldn't have had recourse to. For example, let's say you want to watch a movie about Newton and Descartes and Edmund Hillary on a space adventure fighting another species of humans. Or that someone somewhere will have created this, and using the AI-powered search that we alluded to, you will be able to find this. You'll be able to experience this. So the gap between design and actual creation will have been minimized to a degree that everyone except the laziest will have kind of become a creator or a co-creator. If for no one else, then themselves. Not needing to have a minimum audience size, the ability to create deeply emotionally moving and captivating and attuned experiences that hit all the right spots that the creator wants the content to hit, the ability to create interactive experiences, to create deeply personalized experiences at the level of neuropsychology, will mean that creativity and artistic endeavors will finally be unshackled to become the very best that they can be. And art, which is nothing more than an object that can make us feel powerful emotions or make us think deeply, being one of the most human things there is, means that we won't have to worry about what to do in a world of where AI takes over everything and we don't have to do anything. Art and creativity is all about emotions, about feeling the things that we want to feel, feeling the states, inhabiting the states, enjoying the experiences, the feelings, the thoughts that we want to feel, that tap us into the emotions that tap into different parts of our being. Get in touch with the many different dimensions of the human experience. And it's about things that make us think deeply about the human condition. Art can also be co-opted on an intellectual level to create movements that operate on both the emotional and the cognitive. But at the end of the day, great art, more than anything else, is about, on a psychological level, about pressing buttons that elicit and evoke certain responses and emotions. If we can figure out which buttons to press, both literal and figurative. For this person, pick person A. For this person, what are the buttons to press for this kind of an experience? We can reverse engineer the process of creating great art and content. Rather than doing it from the outside in, we can do it from the inside out. Rather than focusing on creating something which we hope will appeal, we can first engineer what are the kinds of things we want to feel and who are we creating this for, and then create this for the person himself or herself. And AI and Neuralink will be super skilled at this. Creating content that's literally designed with your brain's input, even if that input is not conscious. We're going to see a level of detail and immersion and personalization that'll make the best of our current art and content seem like a simple wheel as contrasted to the Falcon 9. There's obviously a huge risk with this. If the media that you consume hits the sweet spot, the right spot in every single moment, every single frame that you're experiencing it, there is a risk that for many, this will be more compelling than real life. And we'll see a phenomenon that is happening in large pockets in Japan as we speak, that will become more prominent across the board, a disconnection from reality, and spending days in virtual worlds and domains. We already see this with gamers, or people addicted to the internet, or Netflix, or watching sports, etc. Imagine all this being taken up a notch, million X, and how effectively it can get you immersed and captivated. Yeah, scary for that person that you know, but I suspect that you will do just fine if you just keep your head up in the air. Let's have a change of pace now. When does AI truly become creative? It's not a simple philosophical question. There's pragmatic implications and practical implications to this. To answer that question, we have to first understand, what does it mean for a human to be creative? If a person mindlessly combines two art styles or two writing styles, without taking into account the emotional impact and what the output does, do we call it art? We don't. That is how the current AI modalities operate. They combine different things on a statistical basis, and they might be meaningful in the sense that we can understand, we can relate to it, but because the creator itself did not consider the emotional impact or the cognitive impact of it, we don't label it as art. And we don't believe that to be art. We don't believe these AI systems to be artistic or creative. But what if these systems develop an understanding of the fundamentals of the human creature, of emotions, of our fears, of our hopes, of all the things that constitute the self, and they can then use this knowledge to create content, be it at the scale of a person or be it at the scale of groups, even millions of people. This is an example of true creativity, something novel to evoke emotions and provoke thoughts, with a real understanding of the mechanics and the felt experience of those emotional states. This will only happen once we get to true or felt empathy, and we once get to true or felt emotion on AI hardware, which is a fairly long way away, relatively speaking, since there seem to be no real efforts on this front, bar Alinity, which is doing some great work over here in injecting emotion, and more than emotion, empathy as a starting point into AI systems, so that they can understand and model us better, so that they can serve us better. And creating art for us, personalized art for us, is a kind of requirement of this. When I talk about super creations real quick, it was a reference in the title. What are super creations? There are two ways to frame this. One is create art or creative output created by super intelligence that is categorically so different from creations that humans could make, simply because of the level of connections at which it could operate, the level of intellect it could operate at. Such that it could invent new art styles and art forms that could still be translated to human emotions, and be accessible in that way, but not in the sense that we would know how this particular piece of art was created. So this would be one form of super creation, and we are going to see, as soon as we invent AGI or ASI rather, because you see this takeover. Because again, the reason we consume art, the reason we consume content is for emotional impact, to create a certain, to feel a certain way, to create a certain emotional impact. And if the level of impact can be controlled by something that can understand these at a level that far surpasses the best human psychologists, then we are going to see that take over our creative outputs in terms of what works, what gets people humming. And then there are the super personalized, super creations. These works of art are so deeply attuned to you that they can create super stimuli, or the deepest emotional reactions, or the most powerful cognitive reframings. Art that is so powerful in its motive force, mostly because it's built off an understanding of you at a neuropsychological level, and your makeup and your buttons, that produces an effect that would have required God himself to peek into your brain and create that magic. The second category could be co-creations of you with an AGI, with a human or with a human team, with an AGI, to produce something that would be beyond either of those two. How do we reconcile the most fundamental of human things, art and creativity and feeling emotions, with AI doing a far better job at creating these art pieces? An exponentially better job. We have to detach our identities from the process and double down more on experiencing it, right? So with chess, for example, the reason we, until Deep Blue happens, until with Go, obviously AlphaGo happens, for humans, the framing in our minds was that we are, one of the things which makes us special is that we can solve this problem and we are so good at it. But then Deep Blue happens and it just dispels away that illusion that we are great at chess. Well, relatively. I mean, since Deep Blue, the best chess engines can just beat all the best players playing together. It just far surpasses our ability to play chess. We don't compare ourselves, so we don't feel any lesser. And that is a big lesson for us. For everything else that matters to us, that's going to be taken away from the point of view of the process of creation, right? Or the process of doing that thing, so playing chess, or the process of creating art. So AIs will be far better at creating art. We already discussed that. We already arrived at that conclusion. It's pretty inevitable. It's pretty obvious to see for everybody. What we need to do is double down on the feeling part of it. The fact that we can feel these emotions while we are immersed in these things. That's what makes us human. Not creating these things. Sure, that also makes us human, and you can continue to derive your sense of joy, your sense of meaning, and your sense of identity from that. But it's just one part of it. The major part of what makes you you, makes it special, is the ability for you to actually feel those at the deepest level, at your deepest psychological and deepest levels of your cognition. Let's get down to the brass tacks now. How do you use these tools? One way is obviously, again, we briefly touched upon this, one way is complete dependence on it by letting the Neuralink take over. And this means that you just, I wouldn't say you give away autonomy, because it still creates something that you would want to see. That's the whole point of the exercise. Another way is that improving parts of the process by using these tools. This would allow you to stay in more control. Some people also might not want super stimuli. For example, if you create something that, drugs are a great example of this, right? You want to all feel great emotions, and we know drugs make us, we know that because, not because we've tried these out, but because we read about how the hit of cocaine is the greatest hit of happiness that one can feel, right? I might be getting the details wrong, but there's a certain drug which can get you feeling a way that no other experience can, right? And we all care about being the happiest that we can be, but we don't try that because we know that super stimuli are very dangerous. They can get us hooked, they can get us addicted, they can make us lose some fundamental parts of ourselves. For people who don't care as much about pleasure seeking and life as one of the key modes, they can't even relate to chasing happiness. So yeah, there are loads of different reasons and combinations of reasons that make us not do the things that can maximize happiness. And there will be people who will not want to create super stimuli, who will not want to create these brain-based, Neuralink-based outputs or arts for themselves because they know that there might be severe risk with that. Again, everything comes with a risk, so people have a different cost-benefit analysis. But though I think there will be a substantial number of people who won't go down that route of allowing the AI to create everything based on a person, right? Because you can imagine this scenario. This is very concerning, but again, just hypothetical. If you allow an AI to take over, so you got a Neuralink, it can create these worlds which are so immersive that you would not want to get out of these worlds. Like the stories are so immersive, the plots, the characters, they are such great friends of you. Yeah, all these things are so compelling, hitting all the right spots all the time, or in all the ways that you would want them to, at the level of your reptile brain. By the level of your human brain, you would realize that, to seek self-actualization in life, this is the last thing that you want to incorporate in your life. So again, depending on people will, obviously there'll be a huge educational process, because if we think that drugs are addictive, we got a whole another thing coming with these brain-based content things. So yeah, so that'll be that ways of using it. Some people won't use them at all, some people use them minimally, some people use them to augment the creative powers and muscles. Yeah. What's the future of jobs of creators, right? There won't be money in these jobs because almost everyone will have become a creator, and now almost everyone will create for themselves. So you won't be creating value for someone, which is how you make money in this world that we live in, because they would be the best placed person to create that value for themselves, or that AI would rather, even if they don't want to. You could just give a command. You might not even need a Neuralink. You could just say to the AI that, okay, based on what you know about me, all the data points that you have, which you're getting from everything that I do, social media, my journal, etc., all the things I do, create a movie for me that has these things, or that's in this genre, etc., right? That could be one thing. Yeah, so most people, way more than 99.99% of the people, they will lose their jobs. But it won't be a cause of concern because we'll have UBI by the time that this becomes a reality. Money to be made as a creator, right? Some of the richest people in the world are creative people. Tend to be in the extremes, right? You got a lot of poor creative people and a lot of really rich creative people. Musicians, painters like Banksy, obviously painters of the past, singers, directors, producers, etc. Producers, not the creative beating heart of a movie, but let's just put them in that category. Right? So a lot of these people make a bunch of money. This is likely to change, as in these people occupying the top charts. It's probably going to see less and less number of creative people at the top of the money charts. And the reason for that is that there'll be less and less, there'll be fewer and fewer things which productions, be it movies, be it TV series, be it songs, which are going to cater to many people, right? The audience size, the average audience size will keep on decreasing. I don't think it'll ever converge to one. It'll always converge to one, but I don't think it'll ever arrive at one. Let's talk about some examples of actual creations. We're going to see never-ending games, right? So you're playing a game, and the AI is creating graphics, creating new characters, new plot lines as you play in every single moment, based on your choice of gameplay, based on your own evolution as a person. It could be a lifelong game. We would see never-ending TV series and movies with characters that almost become like friends because you spend so much time with them. And these characters may even have their own agentic personalities or consciousness outside of the movie. And then we would see interactive movies where you could just say, okay, change this thing, I don't want to see this, at this point do this, and then continue the story forward according to this change. So you would be immersed in that process. You'd obviously see really insanely realistic. So we talked about the ideation part of it, the characters, the plots, how you feel, but even the level of especially for visual medium. The level of um, visual the level of visual realism, even if that thing is not being transmitted directly to your option, no, it's going to be so insane, so real, so lifelike, that there's not going to be a huge difference. Well, there's not going to be over time, there's not going to be any difference between what you experience on your screen or what you're seeing in the real world. At that level of emotion, at that level of reality, creation, you're going to find that ever more compelling to spend more and more time in that world. You're going to have characters become your AI friends. You're going to see songs created for you that hit all the right spots. You're going to be able to experience you as a protagonist of a movie. Or you could be watching a Nolan movie month by telling the AI that, okay, I don't want to wait another year for a Nolan movie. Create this movie in the style of Nolan, in the style of Nolan or in the style of Kubrick. Or you could see pieces of art created, pieces of content created in the style of combined styles of your favorite authors or your favorite writers, your favorite directors. The possibilities are truly endless. The only limit is your imagination. And for the first time in history, this sentence will actually become true in its truest sense. There's obviously a huge risk that at this level of creation, the characters could become so real, so compelling, so personalized, that for some people, they'll want to forge relationships with these characters. And for the line between creating never-ending movies with using Neuralink that hits all the right spots, and creating an endless personalized AI companion that again hits all the right spots isn't as broad as we would like to believe. And this will mean that a lot more people will fall prey to, I don't want to call it fall prey because a lot of people will choose this lifestyle, but they will form these, because a lot of people, for example, are big fans of Tony Stark. Well, I didn't need double quotes around Tony Stark. Tony Stark, or like people are big fans of pop stars, like they've got posters, etc. I think there's a term for this. People who form relationships, one-sided relationships with characters. What's the term for it? Let me find it. Yeah, so that's parasocial relationships. So the definition of that is that this fan-centric approach builds a world to... Yeah, we're going to see a lot more parasocial relationships, which are defined as one-sided relationships where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. They're most common with celebrities, organizations such as sports teams, and television stars. We're also going to see an explosion of parasocial relationships with AI characters and companions. Only those who want to, and yeah, with this we are going to see, as people become more addicted to content created, tailored for themselves, as people build these kinds of relationships, parasocial relationships with these AI companions, we are going to see the worldification of our world, where people are going to not challenge themselves, they're not going to engage in activities that push themselves, that compel them to grow. People are just going to stay in their comfort zone. Again, this is not coming from a place of judgment, this is just going to be how things are going to pan out. Some movies have been prescient about forming this model of the world as a prediction, and I think they got some of the facts spot on. Only those who want to and are cognitively able to maintain a deep connection and grounding to reality, to family, friends, partners, activities, real-world events, will be able to resist the onslaught of this addictive, digital and pixelated experience. We'll have to work ever harder to keep cognizant of the fact that no matter how compelling creations and companions are, reality is where it is at, and reality is where we want to be at, and reality is what we want to fight for, even as we dip into these figments of our minds ever so often. With that thought, I bid you goodbye, with the hope that your mind may be ever more grounded in reality, in the truth, even as you enjoy ever more enjoyable, ever more personalized, and ever more compelling experiences and fictions. Bye-bye.